Ladies and gentlemen, there's a moment in life when silence becomes the loudest sound you'll ever hear. A moment when you think no one is watching, no one is listening, and no one will ever know. But what if I told you? Those are the moments that define who you are. Today, I want to tell you a story, a billionaire, a hospital bed, a coma. At least that's what everyone believed, but he wasn't asleep. He was awake, listening, watching, waiting, and what he heard from the nurse who cared for him would change both of their lives forever. This story is not just about wealth, it's not just about deception, it's about truth, character, and what we do when no one's keeping score. Let me give you 5 truths we learned from this story. The nurse didn't know he was listening. She thought he was deep in a coma, lost to the world. She thought the room was silent still. Just another shift, just another patient. So she spoke. Not loudly, not dramatically, just honestly. She whispered her worries into the quiet. She confessed how hard it had become to raise her children on her own, how every morning felt heavier than the last, how the world didn't seem to notice her, how exhaustion had wrapped around her life like chains. She said this room, the one with the quiet man and the humming machines, was the only place she felt safe enough to cry. And still, through all that pain, she never lost her kindness. She gently wiped his face like he was her own father. She tucked his blankets with care like it mattered, like he mattered. She didn't rush, didn't complain, didn't check the clock every 5 minutes. She just stayed present, human. She didn't do it because he was a billionaire. She didn't know, she didn't care. She did it because he was alive, because that's what her heart told her to do. That's character, not the kind people post on social media. Not the one that wins awards or earns applause, but the kind that shows up in the shadows, in the quiet, when no one else sees. The kind that doesn't need witnesses. True character is what you do when the world's not looking, when there's no paycheck tied to your kindness. No reward waiting at the end of your patience. Just you, your choices, and your integrity. In the dark, when no eyes are on you, your soul stands naked, and in that silence, who you are becomes impossible to hide. Humility often wears a quiet uniform. It doesn't come with applause, nor does it ask for recognition. This nurse wasn't famous. She wasn't a CEO or someone who'd ever had her name printed in bold, but she was kind. She was consistent, and above all, she was present. Every day, every shift, every moment she was needed. Her strength didn't shout, it whispered in every small act of care, in every quiet sacrifice, in every patient she treated like they mattered, even when no one was watching. The billionaire lying in that hospital bed had seen the world from the top. He had navigated billion-dollar mergers, stood in boardrooms filled with suits and strategy. He'd built empires with sharp minds and firm handshakes. But he had never encountered a presence so steady, so honest, so completely unshaken by power. This nurse didn't care about his status. She wiped his face, adjusted his pillow, and spoke to him with a dignity that required no explanation. She did it not for applause, but because that's who she was. He began to see her not as a servant, but as a mirror, reflecting a kind of strength he had lost along the way. The world had taught him to lead with dominance, but she led with compassion. She reminded him that humility isn't weakness, it's power restrained, it's grace in motion, it's strength that doesn't need an audience. And in that hospital room, surrounded by machines and silence, he understood something money had never taught him. True greatness is often found in the ordinary. Sometimes the most powerful people wear scrubs. And sometimes the most honorable titles are never announced. They're lived daily in the quiet ways that change lives without ever needing credit. You can't measure worth by net worth. That truth echoed loudest in a quiet hospital room where a man known for power and prestige lay still, paralyzed, speechless, watching the world without being able to move through it. His name was on buildings. He had private jets, endless contacts, and accounts overflowing with wealth. But in that bed, all of it meant nothing. He couldn't command attention, couldn't sign deals, couldn't even ask for water. And yet, a woman, a nurse earning just enough to survive, walked into that room each day with the kind of grace that can't be bought. She adjusted his blankets with care. She spoke to him gently, not because he was rich, but because he was human. She didn't see a billionaire lying there. She saw a man, vulnerable, scared, alone. Her compassion wasn't performative, it was real. She didn't know he could hear her, and still she offered kindness without expectation. That's the thing about real value. It isn't written in salary figures or stock portfolios. It's etched into moments of truth. How we treat those who can give us nothing. The nurse had no fame, no fortune. But in those silent exchanges, in the way she saw him as a person instead of a paycheck, she revealed something deeper than status, character. The irony, the man who owned empires couldn't lift a finger, while the woman with worn shoes and tired eyes moved with strength he'd never known. And in that room she held more power than all his wealth combined, because money may open doors, but only integrity opens hearts. And when the world fades away, when the noise stops, and all that's left is who we truly are, it's not the riches that matter. It's the kindness that remains. Sometimes you have to go undercover to see the truth. The billionaire wasn't trying to deceive anyone out of malice. He wasn't playing a game or seeking revenge. He just wanted to know. Deep down, he needed to see who would show up when everything else disappeared, when he couldn't talk, couldn't command, couldn't offer a reward, when the power of his name was silent, and the influence of his fortune was locked away. Who would care then? Who would stay? Who would choose kindness without cameras, applause, or expectation? It's easy to be admired when you're on top, when you're shaking hands in corner offices, when your name opens doors and your signature writes checks. People smile a little wider. They laugh at your jokes even when they're not funny. They rush to meet your needs, but often they're chasing the glow that surrounds you, not the person you are underneath. But when that glow dims, when the spotlight moves on or the mask is lifted, who remains? Sometimes the greatest revelations don't come through confrontation. They come through quiet, in stillness, in those spaces where no one knows they're being watched. Where actions aren't driven by obligation, but by choice. And in life, though you may not always get the chance to stage your own test, you will have moments where the truth slips in unnoticed, in how someone talks about you when you're not in the room, in how they treat you when you have nothing to give, in what they choose when no one's keeping score. So learn to be still, observe, let people reveal themselves. The truth rarely arrives with a trumpet. It often walks in quietly, wearing the clothes of ordinary moments, and when it does, believe what you see. Kindness is never wasted, especially when it's given in the quiet, when no one is watching, when no reward is promised. The nurse didn't know he was listening. She didn't know the man lying in that bed, a man she believed to be unresponsive, was fully aware. She confessed her burdens out loud, not because she sought sympathy, but because the silence of that room gave her space to breathe. Her words were raw, vulnerable. She spoke of long nights, hungry children, overwhelming debt, and the ache of trying to be strong for everyone else. And through it all, she kept showing up gentle, steady, kind. At the end of his stay, the billionaire opened his eyes and shattered her understanding of the past few weeks. He wasn't in a coma. He had heard every word, felt every tear she tried to hide, but instead of reacting with pity, he responded with action. He paid off her debts, ensured her children's education, and gave her the dignity she never asked for but so deeply deserved. Not because she had begged for it, not because she knew he was rich, but because her kindness had no agenda. Her care came without condition. That's the kind of goodness this world forgets to celebrate. The kind done in shadows, behind closed doors, when applause is absent. That's the kind that changes lives. So if you're tired of giving your best and wondering if it matters, keep going. Keep choosing integrity when shortcuts tempt you. Keep showing up with heart even when no one notices, because someone somewhere is always paying attention. Sometimes it's the person you least expect, and sometimes it's just your own soul remembering who you are. In the end, it's the smallest acts done in silence that echo the loudest.